I go sit down, and I don't care if you're just beginning or you are a billionaire. You have a gap somewhere. All I do is I go in and fill the gap. That's the difference between serving and selling. I don't go in with an agenda other than to listen and help them close a gap. That's how you serve billionaires. That's how you serve Olympians.
Welcome to the podcast about communication in business. I'm your host, George Torok. Did you know that I'm known as the speech coach for executives? Because I help business leaders deliver the intended message for greater success. And through this podcast, we explore various aspects about how we communicate with others and even ourselves. My guest today is Chad E. Cooper. Here's 3 facts that I think you should know about Chad. 1, he's a coach to high performers of several industries, billionaires, who, yes, need help. Oh, that is so reassuring. Professional athletes in title fights and events, gold medal Olympians, and amazing entrepreneurs. 2, he has a background of high performance himself as an entrepreneur, athlete, and in the military. And 3, he found one interesting ingredient that prevents the fall from grace, and that is to grow through his spiritual journey while performing in the material experiences. An interesting connection I'd like to know more about. Chad Cooper, welcome to Your Intended Message.
Thank you, George. I am excited and ready to dive into some of that questionable phrasing.
Good. And we're eager to learn more about that. And let's start with the last point about how you make a connection between your spiritual journey and your material experiences. How does that look? What do you do there?
Yeah, I would say when we look at that, my background is I'm also a tribal member of the oldest indigenous tribe of New Zealand, of the Maori tribe, the Waitaha. And they really said it quite well when we were reflecting about gurus and teachers and the sage, wise people of the Western world. And they said, the thing that we see is that there's a bunch of gurus doing spirituality and not being spiritual. And so when we look at that, the easiest way to look at how do we actually retain the material while we participate in the spiritual is simply by waking up and asking ourselves, who do I want to be in the midst of whatever I'm going to be doing? And what happens is somewhere along the way, we often compromise or lose our way. And we say, well, I got to pay the bills. Well, you don't understand. I have these demands. And we actually start compromising our beingness because of our choices and our doingness.
And I find that fascinating because I can, funny how that triggered a memory, a time when I remember when in one place where I was working where, yeah, exactly. That was my argument. Well, I've got to feed the family. I've got to pay the bills. So this is what the boss expects from me. I don't like it. It just tears me apart. But I got to be an asshole because that's how he operates here, and that's how we treat people. And fortunately for me, I only lasted 9 months in that job. I just quit one day. I blew into a rage and quit. Before I actually blew someone away. And I would have been the wrong person too. It was a terrible time. I remember in my life, with pressure from, financial and family, and then that terrible work environment.
Yeah. And so what that looks like in a practical sense, and one of the challenges I see is because of the type of coaching that I do, there in executive coaching, there's 4 tenets. There's physical, logical, emotional, and spiritual. And most of my clients come to me because something that they would attribute to either emotional or material or the physical is absent and missing. But the reality is the piece that's actually missing, and I'd say probably 85% of the clients that come to me initially are like, my empire is at risk, my relationship is at risk, something is at risk, or I've attained and something's missing. And that something is their spiritual intimacy. That intimacy between them and whatever that higher power is that they are seeking to better understand. And so when we actually go in and acknowledge, I can invest in my empire and in my entrepreneurship or in my family and in my health, but how strong do you think your marriage would be if you didn't invest in the time, in the effort of that marriage? It'd be, pretty lame, right? Well, our spiritual relationship's no different. And so that begins with the process of understanding that happiness, joy, peace is not an effect. It's an inside job, as Abraham Lincoln said. It's an inside job. So what that then requires of us, George, is to really understand that we can't control our environment. We can't control others. At best, we can influence them. So we have to take responsibility for what we can control, which is ourselves. So we can't necessarily change that we have a jerk boss. We can't necessarily change the economics of a situation, but we can choose how we respond, how we approach it, and how we actually navigate through that. So there's times where we just have to realize, hey, this partnership or this employer is not going to last. But do we compromise our beingness in the midst of responsibility to do and maybe call something to the end? And what often happens is people go, oh, George, you don't understand. This person is such an asshole. I'm justified. No, you choose to. When you get angry, we choose to get angry. What is it to love others that love you back? We know that from scripture. The hard thing is to love those that are trying to prosecute or persecute or trying to destroy you. Go be love in the midst of while you navigate away from your enemies. That's the higher calling. That's the challenge, right? Doesn't mean we sit there and we take the abuse. Doesn't mean that we should go, oh, I guess I'm meant to be poor. Says who? There's nothing in any religions that say you're destitute to be poor and that's some character trait of enlightenment. No, the best way to help the poor is don't be poor yourself. So I work with people who are high performers and to hold on to that and take those characteristics and bring in and restore their beingness, restore their spirit, their consciousness.
Can high performers be high performers without that spiritual connection?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes, they can. So when we look at one of the best examples is David R. Hawkins, and he created what's called the scale of consciousness from 0 to 1,000. And anything from 199 below to 0 is using force energy. And at 199 is pride. So you've heard in scripture, for example, in the Abrahamic scriptures, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, is pride cometh before the fall. Well, 200 is the tipping point between force energy and generating or empowering energy. And so it's an illusion or misnomer that you can't build an empire on force energy. You absolutely can. The thing about force energy is it has to take from one place in order to be reconverted into another. And so we can look at that in maybe unhealthy ways of a vampire takes from other things, right? So corporations can take from people or government or other places. And in that relationship of force, we have to take from one space in order to serve another. And there are appropriate times. So what we don't want to do is label as one is good, one is bad. Energy is energy is energy. You don't look at an atom and go, oh, the proton is good and the neutron is bad. No, right? It's just doing what it does. The question is, what are we doing? Which are we choosing to leverage? So when we go from 200, which is courage is the tipping point, it takes courage to say, I'm going to build an empire by generating, by going out and hunting, by going out and creating to serve both myself and others. But with courage, it requires the next step. And that is a willingness and a trust to accept that it's possible, to accept that we are capable of actually succeeding. And from there, we can have inspiration and all of the other pieces that go with that. But from force, we can do that from greed. We can do that from anger. We can do it from a lot of different places. And there are times, look, if you have a threat, martial arts teaches you the 3 principles. Can't really be a black belt in any of them without understanding. You have to communicate. And when communication breaks down, walk away. And when walking away in refraining doesn't work and breaks down, then you may have to use force on force. But as men, we often think, oh, I got to go kick somebody's butt. Well, maybe you need to call the police and use police force, right? We have a brain and we have hands. Why don't we actually learn how to use them intelligently and use that properly? And we can convert that force to generating in order to build our empires. But yes, you can build an empire. And we know for 6,000 years, Ray Dalio said, every empire, kingdom, or nation rises and falls about every 250 years. Guess where the United States is? Just about at 250 years. Now, if we change our ways, which requires a radical pivot, takes courage, and we go in to generate, and regardless of the politics of this incoming president, if you look at, he wants to create change, hard decisions to reduce. They're looking at here's where we're going versus who do I blame? And so when we look at that, we can say, oh, this is somebody who's moving away from force energy. And I think that you could say that Trump used force energy quite a bit to realizing maybe what I need to do is generate and create in order to do that pivot. So it's a really interesting balance of when do we leverage each? And so we can look at that and we want to look at when somebody's achieved and built an empire, which energy choice are they sourcing that from?
And I believe I see an analogy there between force and what do you call in the other type of energy? I'm sorry.
Generate or create.
Generate.
Empowering energy.
Okay, so I think about I'm a runner. I've been running most of my life since high school, and I have run several marathons, but not anymore. I don't want that much pain at this time in my life. But I remember in the beginning, I had to start and put out a lot of force just to show up, to get out the door, to practice. And these days, I run 3 times a week. About maybe 3 to 5 miles, depending on the day and the weather. And I noticed that the hardest part for me is stepping out the door. It's that beginning. It's I look outside. Oh, it's look at the weather. Oh, I don't know. And then once I'm out there, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
I just keep moving. It's like momentum or a habit or automatic. It just doesn't seem to, I don't have to force myself to do it. It's just, okay, I'm doing it now.
Yeah. So when we look at that from the basic level, and let's just say, because of where I live, there's always palm trees and blue skies and sunshine, right? Sorry, don't mean to rub it in. It's just one of the benefits. Other parts of our beautiful nation are maybe a little bit more frigid, a little bit more gray and brown, right? And so even when we make a decision to go out and commit to our exercise, we might need to use some energy such as, demanding of ourselves or pride of this is the identity, I'm a runner. That's an identity. And in order to maintain that identity, and it's one of the things that the human condition will tear down things in order to preserve its identity. And so we might need to use force to say, I'm going to put myself out in this uncomfortable environment, right? So we can look at it from that perspective of, okay, I'm going to take maybe from my comfort zone to fuel this decision to move forward. But once we're out there, we can move from that force to generating or empowering by being able to know what is my purpose, right? What is the actual intent of this? If we're just using discipline, we can use that for a period of time, but it will give way to temptation, right? those dozen donuts that are there in the morning instead of running will finally get their victory. Okay. So how do we then move from maybe living, and I would say it's fair to believe in some respects that in the Western world, we're indoctrinated to use force energy, right? We take pride on Americans are fighters, and we have to fight our way to preserve freedom. Maybe not. But we can also look at running from what's my identity from a strength of purpose. So as a former major sponsor triathlete, my belief in my purpose was being a role model to my son of what's possible, of understanding that when you take care of your body, it enables you to be much more mentally alert and powerful in business, in your relationships, and being able to be a participant, go hiking or play together. And so that strength of purpose is actually far more energetic above 200 than in force energy. But in order to do that, that courage means we have to believe and hope that it's possible, and B, that there's a path to get there. So for you wouldn't go outside if you didn't believe that there was a path to succeeding in that run, right? That there's not a pile of snow or slip and hurt yourself on the ice, or that you might get injured, right? If you don't believe there's a path to success, then we drop down into force energy. And so what I work with is to help professional athletes, to help billionaires, to help Olympians who have a model, have known what success looks like, know the ingredients, tap back into those ingredients and bring them into the present and be able to actually execute on them for what's in front of them. And Lou Holtz, I think it was Lou Holtz, said, a defense is what you see when you take your eyes off the goal line. And so what we do is we take and ignore the defense and we focus on the goal. And that's what allows us to navigate and get resourceful to succeed.
After I ran my first marathon, I knew it could be done. But up until that point, I didn't really know that personally. Yes, I know other people have done it, but could Georgie Porgy do it? I didn't know that until I done it. And then, look, I did it.
Yeah.
If you haven't yet reached your goal, if you haven't succeeded, how can you believe in a path?
So there's a couple of things. We can look at other examples of people who have left the template, who have succeeded. J.K. Rowling is a great example, and most people don't know that she wrote Harry Potter with the end first and then wrote it backwards. So when you think about a marathon, you're picking the destination first, and it's a lot easier, as you know, George, to work to do the training plan backwards than from forward to, I don't know how far I have to run. If I know it's 26.2 miles, I know the destination, and I can go, okay, week 12, I need to be at this mileage. Week 11, I need to be at this mileage. Week 10, I need to do a recovery, so I'm going to lower it. We can work that plan backwards. And so we can look at it from that perspective is we need to know the destination. We need to know the purpose, the why we're doing it, right? And then we need an empowering identity that keeps us on that path when it becomes painful, when it becomes difficult. See, to run your first marathon, you probably hit the wall at mile 19, and there's going to be pain. We have to accept, and this is one of the illusions and misnomers of life, pain is a necessary ingredient to success. Anything worthwhile is going to include some discomfort. And I learned that in the Marine Corps. I learned to get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's how you succeed. Suffering, however, are the stories about the pain, and we can choose to leave the story on the sideline. So drop the narrative, and we can move out of force energy immediately when we drop the story of victim. Victimization has been a popular narrative for several years in our particular country, but globally as well. And when we drop the script of, okay, I'm the victim, George, you're the evil villain, you pick up your script, I'll pick up mine, and we're going to play this out. Well, if you choose not to pick up the script, then there's nobody that's going to play. And we can actually pick up the empowering identity of, instead of victim, victor or victory. So we move our focus away from the defense. Oh, you don't understand. I don't have it's a money issue. Oh, you don't understand. Somebody tried to take from me. Well, drop the narrative. Keep your eye on the destination, an empowering identity, and a resounding purpose. And that's pointing your eye on the goal. And so then we have inspiration of it's possible, right? And the inspiration of here's the map. And we can look at an African proverb, walk as far as you can see. And when you get there, you'll be able to see further. So the trick isn't that you know the entire path. The trick is you know the destination and you know the next milestone. Think about it. If you go from California to New York, you know you're going to have to stop for hotels and gas and bathroom breaks, etc. And GPS maps it out for you. Here's how many miles you have in range. Here's where, you've drank X amount of liters or ounces of water. This is where you got to go and take a pee, right? Life's that easy. And Confucius said, life is simple, but we insist on making it complicated. So keep it simple. Keep the rules easy to win.
Chad, I'm curious about the dilemmas that billionaires face when they come to you for help, because I can't imagine that a billionaire's got anything to worry about.
You know what they worry about the most? One of the things that they worry about the most, there's two things. One, how do they keep the money that they've got? See, what people don't understand is when you get to that level of money, George, it's a full-time job to manage those funds. They can be up or down by multi-millions of dollars per day, per hour. And so managing that is basically managing an entire portfolio full-time. So they have to make sure, do they have the right people that they can entrust, trust but verify, to actually grow that portfolio? How do they actually avoid taxes? Look, I'm a big proponent for small government. I will take every single loophole the IRS offers. If you don't want me to take it, close the loophole. That's how winning is done. It's legal, it's ethical, there's nothing wrong. That's what billionaires do. Look at what they do for success. The second is relationships. They've usually, one of the things that when they asked the Dalai Lama what surprised him most about mankind, he said that we will spend down our health in order to gain materially. And then later we will spend all of our material wealth in order to restore our health. Billionaires play that like a fiddle. They've achieved materially, but they're empty in some area. I was a guinea pig for Northwestern Mutual Financial, and they wanted to see if I could succeed part-time, semi-retired as a financial advisor. And after a year, working about 15 hours a week, I kicked the crap out of people working 60 hours a week. And they said, what are you doing? I said, it's real simple. This is how I serve high performers. It's how I serve billionaires. And the key word was serve. I said, look, you guys have a portfolio of every world-class product. You're teaching people to sell insurance or annuities. I go sit down, and I don't care if you're just beginning or you are a billionaire. You have a gap somewhere. All I do is I go in and fill the gap. That's the difference between serving and selling. I don't go in with an agenda other than to listen and help them close a gap. That's how you serve billionaires. That's how you serve Olympians, is that we show up and listen, and then we ask questions to help them find the answers from within.
And I'm intrigued by that concept of looking for the gap, finding the gap, and then filling the gap and serving others by filling the gap. And I'm reminded of a networking event that I attended recently, and the person was selling insurance and insisting that I needed business insurance while I'm working from my home basement because someone could sue me while I'm coaching them virtually. They might, and I'm thinking, think about this. I've been doing this for almost 30 years and hasn't happened yet. Why do you think it's going to happen now? But this person was so focused on selling their product that they weren't interested in on even knowing much about me. They asked one question and then they put a label on me, and therefore the label triggered the appropriate pitch.
Yeah. So this is where the spirit can come in. Okay. And this is where, when we look at in chakras as an example. So I have a degree, undergraduate degree in psychology and religion. So I know many of the religions around the world. And one of those is looking at chakras within some of the Far Eastern religions. And we need to accept, we have a head, we have our mind, our ego, our intelligence, we have a heart, and that's where our emotions reside. And our heart, our emotions can actually betray us. Our emotions can lie to us, right? And then we have down in our abdomen, that's where when we say, oh, I'm going to go with my gut, oh, my intuition. Well, there's a reason, because there's more mitochondria in bacterial life in our gut than the rest of our entire body. That's where our sage wisdom and truth actually resides. And so we have a responsibility to use all three, but to know in what order as well, and then use our hands to execute on that. So if we look at our intuition, we can look at sports, we can look at nature, we can look at the medical industry. All sports, whether it's chess, whether it is American football or European football, or whether it is hockey, whatever that is always looking for the gap. That's how you score. You go for the gap. You don't go straight into whatever the barrier is. So when we look at that from a business perspective, what that's saying is we have to get resourceful to navigate when an obstacle gets in our way. When a resource is denied, we have to get resourceful. And sports teaches us to juke and jive to find the gap. In chess, we're looking for the gap to be able to do checkmate. When we look at nature, if we're going west, we're going to look for the gap in the mountains and go through the valley to get through safely, right? So success in high performers know where to find the gap. But with that requires wisdom to not take detours that get you lost. That's why it's imperative that we know the destination, so we don't take a shortcut, we don't take a gap that gets us lost. So we have to know the destination along the way. When somebody's saying, George, I asked you a question, their agenda using force energy is they want to sell insurance. But if we look at coaching similar to that of a doctor, you don't walk into the doctor's office and say, okay, here's your prescription. What? You don't even know what my ailment is. What do? They diagnose. They ask, why are you even here? And once they ask enough questions, hopefully they move past the symptom. And this is a challenge in our medical industry because of other reasons, but often they're giving you a prescription to numb the symptom instead of going for the root. And that's really what coaching is about. So what was this gentleman doing? Possibly going to numb the symptom, and he was manipulating so he wins, you might or might not win. But when we actually come from a servant leader position, we're asking questions to influence so that they win and we win. And we say, oh, I have a product for that gap, or I don't have a product for that gap. I can't help you, but I know someone who would. That's how we actually go from force energy to generating or empowering. Empowering is not always making the sale. It might be making a relationship, and it might serve you down the road. Might not.
In order to tap into the full power of our spirituality, do we need to be religious?
Well, let's separate religion from spirit, right? So the question I get, because I consider myself a Christian Buddhist, and people are like, well, especially the Christian community. I'm like, well, first of all, Christianity is a religion. Buddhism is a philosophy, and most people don't know. So Christianity is about salvation. Buddhism is about enlightenment. Guess what? They're interwoven. They're compatible. And so it's really important that we understand that all of them are pointing to the same destination. They're all pointing to the same thing, something of a higher power than us. And we need to then, as Buddha said, the finger pointing at the moon is not the moon, George. People go, what? You're an idiot. And I go, okay, let me say this another way. Separate the Christian from Christianity. Separate the Muslim from Islam. And it doesn't mean that they're all, that, but right? Separate the Jew from Judaism. We need to separate the humanity in our imperfections from the spirit, right? We are constantly tempted. Separate the humanness from the religion itself. So I can look at and say, oh, myself as a Christian, I missed the mark. The word sin, depending on which denomination you go into a church, right? Sin can be, brimstone and fire and hell damnation, right? But if we actually look at our history and educate ourselves, and there's this thing called the internets or a library. Yes, I was being facetious there. But if we actually understand the Greek origin of sin means to miss the mark. Well, I can guarantee I missed the mark somewhere in this conversation. So what it allows us to do is maybe be a little bit more gentle, a little bit more compassionate and empathetic to ourselves. Because remember, happiness, love is an inside job. So if I learn to love myself, I learn to have a healthy self-esteem, self-confidence, and I learn that where I stand in life is not based on your opinion of me or anyone. It's between me and the man above. And am I living up to that standard? Is that conversation between he and I? As you and I got on before we started was, look, what you got going on is like, let's get this done. You're not the most important thing to me. And people get all butthurt about that. It's like, have enough self-love to say, and where did I learn this? I learned this as an elected official for a decade. About 2 years in, I would come home late at night after a council meeting, and I would just start vomiting all over my wife about, these idiots and my peers and blah, blah, blah. And she finally said, I can't take this anymore. You either have to resign or learn to compartmentalize and leave that crap at the dais. And she was right. It was disrespectful and unloving towards her and myself. And so what I realized in that is it takes courage, going back to Hawkins, to move from force energy of, I'm not going to take this crap from people giving me they're the victim and I'm the villain because I have the title of being elected. I mean, I was amazed, people that I got along with before, they're like, oh, you're the best. As soon as I became an elected official, I was the enemy. Nothing changed other than I was elected. So we choose to do that. But when we drop that role and go, yeah, no, I'm not going to play the victim, it allows us from our faith-based position to remove the religion and understand the spirit. And as we talked about earlier, I just expect every human being has one significant difficulty going on in their life. And so it allows me to maybe be a little bit more empathetic, a little bit more compassionate towards them. It allows me to approach, I understand, doesn't equate to we agree. I can understand and not agree. And so as an elected official, I learned to understand what people ask for, not that we would always agree. And that allowed me to make some courageous choices, move from force energy to courage, to make decisions and act on those from inspiration, act on those from a place of forgiveness and acceptance, act on them from a place of understanding and reason, knowing that decision is for the majority. And there's always going to be a minority that disagrees. But we have to have enough self-worth to be able to say, whether you agree and tell me I'm amazing, or whether you disagree and judge me and tell me I'm horrible, I'm indifferent. I am not attached to your judgment or your accolades either. And that's the mistake that we make is we go, oh, I love the praise, and you try to resist the negative. I'm unattached to either. Your opinion of me really plays no weight in my self-worth or my self-esteem. That's between me and a higher power.
Wow, there's a lot of wisdom in that statement. I'm not attached to your judgment of me. I believe that there's a phrase that that many of us need to perhaps repeat on a daily basis, almost, because there are times when we do seem to take great joy when someone agrees with us, and we get terribly upset. They must be an idiot. They don't agree with me. There's something wrong with them. I don't understand those people.
Well, and that's what it comes down to, right? And when we look at discrimination, when we look at people who are prejudiced, it's because they actually don't understand differences actually are a strength. Our differences in the United States is one of the greatest strengths of our nation. Differences are something that allow us to get resourceful and leverage those differences to become stronger. But when we are unattached to other people's opinions, that doesn't mean it creates a void. And the human condition doesn't handle a void well at all. We have to fill that. So what we want to do in that is be unattached to desire. To desire something means, in its Latin origin, means to not have. So if I desire more money, that means I don't have enough money. So instead, I can be unattached and still have a preference. I have a strong preference for financial abundance, physical abundance, relational abundance, career abundance, etc. Right? So I can have a preference, but still be unattached to which way it comes out. So who are some high performers that are unattached to opinion? Well, I can think of Elon Musk as one of them. That dude is a anomaly that is like completely, I think one of my favorite things that I've ever seen posted was when he first became the richest man in the world. And he sent a post out, something like, I just learned that I'm the richest man in the world. Oh, back to work.
Yeah, like, so what?
That title, that achievement did not define him. He was not attached to the emotions and the identity behind it. What he was attached to was the strength of his purpose and the commitment of what got him out of bed. So attaining some empty title was like, I'm the richest today, probably won't be tomorrow. He's indifferent. He's immune. So when we can be immune to the accolades and the judgment, we actually can find happiness within.
So I have to.
That's what religion and spirituality are really trying to unite.
And I'm thinking about poor Elon, and I'm thinking I just have to learn to be happy not being the richest. I don't really care. I'm not the richest. So what? Elon doesn't care. I don't care either. So that makes us equal.
There you go.
Chad, for people who'd like to know more about you, your services, they can visit your website. That's chadecooper.com. What will they find there, and who are the right people that should be going there?
I appreciate that. Thank you, George. What you're going to find there should be a couple of books. I think we're bringing a couple of them online, but you can find my book on time management and being a master of how do you make time your, well, pardon me, but make it your bitch instead of you being a slave to it, right? So I've learned to take the expertise in the shortcuts, the tricks of time management from high performers and put it into a way that you can also be a master of time instead of being a slave to it. You're also going to find during the holidays right now a free book out there, and that is How to Turn Off Your Work Brain and Be Present without it costing you your business. With the holidays and compressing time, we're torn between, I don't have enough time to get things done. It's a great read. It's a very short read. But you're also going to find on there the ability where, for the first time in 18 years, I actually have always been word of mouth referral, and I'm actually opening my doors to probably 6 of the right people that are looking for coaching. So what are those people? Those are people who have learned how to succeed, want to retain whatever success they've had and not have to go off a cliff while they are looking to create and nurture their spiritual relationship. So that's the ideal client. Know that I've worked with people, on average, my retaining clients is like 13 years and longer. So I don't do transaction. You're all in, and they continue to get enough value that they've been with me for many, many years.
And you can find that website in the description below. Chad, as we prepare to wrap up, if you could sit down with a growing business leader who's still got runway left in their career, and they know there's greatness somewhere along down the road, and they can see that they can do things. They have had some success. If you could give them 1, 2, or 3 pieces of advice to help them launch that career, to get them going, to the goal that they really want to reach, what might be that 1, 2, or 3 pieces of advice?
Yeah, I would say hands down, one of the most important is if we look at a coffee or a tea cup, it used to be that it always had a saucer with it, right? You put the cup on top of a saucer. My invitation is to create enough that you fill that cup to overflowing and give whatever spills into the saucer to others. In other words, when we look at this from agricultural, that's our heritage in our country is agriculture, just about everybody's, right? Is we want to create what's called a bumper crop. Overproduce so that your needs are met and you contribute beyond yourself. So when we look at all high performers, the vast majority, George, contribute beyond themselves. They have a charity, they have a cause, they do something that allows them to grow and contribute beyond themselves. When we do that, it's kind of like standing on a cliff. You have two sides. If you aim for here just enough to meet your needs, you're going to fall short and go down into the hole and you're going to die, okay? But if you aim past the ledge, you overproduce, you're going to land safely on solid ground. And that allows you to then be able to serve others as well. So the high performers are not a me. They actually are a we. Look at Elon Musk as an example, right? He's not about me. Whether you like the guy or not, look at the behavior of how he relates to others. And it's a we mentality. So the number one I would say is know your purpose and contribute beyond yourself, and you're going to succeed.
Powerful advice. A lot of powerful tips in this episode, and I recommend that people play it back and listen again and take good notes. My guest today is Chad E. Cooper, reminding you that happiness is an inside job. If you like what you heard, tell your friends and post your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, because that helps more listeners find us. Come back every week for more practical insights to help you deliver your intended message. I'm your host, George Torok.